is the Pokemon franchise's first and original trainer, Red from Pallet Town, able to take down the Pokemon anime's Golden Boy, Ash Ketchum, also from Pallet Town. In this video, we will be dissecting what exactly makes each of these legendary masters so formidable, be it their battle intelligence, proven true adaptability and reaction time, or just their Pokemon's outright superior strength. Not only will we fully understand what each trainer is capable of on the battlefield, we'll also be able to correctly predict how exactly their brains are going to calculate plans and strategies mid-fight. And for the finale, we'll come up with a theory for each trainer's ideal team for this challenge. So whether you actually care about who wins or not, or you're just learning to learn a thing or two about each character you might not have known before, since I've already gone into an extreme amount of detail about Manga Red in another video, let's start off with Ash's major accomplishments before comparing the two against one another. But before that, let's get into a quick message from this video's sponsor, Gamersups. Listen, if you need an energy drink that's gonna keep you going throughout the day while also not making you crash, and at the same time it's giving you a bunch of vitamins like C, D, and even some nootropics to keep you energized, not only if you've never tried them before, they'll give you a free sample if you use my code NOOP, they'll also just give you 10% off your order if you use the code anyway. Try some flavors from your favorite anime like JoJo's or Darling in the Franxx. Again, use my link in the description or code NOOP for 10% off your order. Thank you Gamersups for sponsoring the channel. So when we look at the battler Red, who was the top trainer in all of Kanto in his series, how does Ash, a perpetually unaging and never maturing child, compare to someone whose brain actually develops over time? For starters, considering no other trainer besides Ash and Gary were even able to complete Kanto's 8 gym badge trial in the anime, Ash too is also a top trainer of Kanto from Pallet Town. Not only has Ash entered the Orange League Hall of Fame, he also managed to complete the Battle Frontier and defeat Pyramid King Brandon with his legendary Reggies. Add in the fact that Ash is also the champion of the Alola region, I say his accolades stack up pretty dang well to Manga Red. But one thing I don't think Red has done is win the Masters 8 tournament, a competition featuring some of the strongest Pokemon trainers in all of the world, where Ash proved his superiority in battle against regional champions like Steven Stone of Hoenn, Cynthia of Sinnoh, and Leon of the Galar region. At the end of all of this, crowning Ash as the strongest trainer out of the entire Pokemon world. But if that doesn't convince you, because to be honest, as the main protagonist of an anime, a lot of you might not believe he worked his way to the top by the end of it. And if you're like me and have been around since the literal first episode of the first season, it wouldn't surprise you to also hear Ash has lost plenty of times in his career, and sometimes in very questionable and or dumb ways. So instead of letting the two main characters' achievements or titles decide a victor, we're just gonna move on to what actually matters, their tried and proven true methods of battle. And for Ash, even though he does have multiple instances of irrational thought or brain farting, he has had multiple decades of time to stand out and have some downright moments of awesomeness, stemming back to even the beginning of his trainer career, like during Ash's battle against Gary in the Orange League, where once he realizes that Gary's Blastoise is too mobile to land a good strike on, Ash commands his Charizard to instead melt the arena around Blastoise, limiting the Pokemon's movements and trapping it in the perfect spot for a counterattack. Or in Johto, when Ash is facing the Ice Gym leader Price, even though he's facing a massive type disadvantage with his Cyndaquil going up against Price's Dugong, rather than letting that bad matchup deter him, Ash embraces it. Once Dugong is lured in close, Cyndaquil uses Swift to stun the Pokemon, bringing it out of the water where Cyndaquil can use its full power flamethrower to KO Dugong. Two of many instances that prove even when Ash was at his least experienced, there were traces of a high-level mindset there. And most of this early battle intelligence realistically probably stems from the deep bonds Ash would form with his Pokemon. As one of the most interesting things that constantly gets brought up about the Pokemon Adventures manga compared to other series is the fact that it actually forces the trainers to get involved in the battles with their Pokemon, creating a level of danger and stakes because the attacks can not only be fatal for the Pokemon, but also for the trainer, which usually ends up giving the trainers from the manga series a significant amount of larger aura compared to the video games or anime characters. However, when it comes to Ash Ketchum, I don't think you could exactly say that's true. There are plenty of times when Ash is more than willing to step into battle and shield his Pokemon from potentially fatal or underhanded tactics. I mean, the whole reason Pikachu even comes to appreciate its relationship with Ash in the first place is because he's willing to sacrifice himself in the Storm and Spearow attack to get Pikachu help. And honestly, for most of Ash's other Pokemon, the situation is pretty much the same, leading to an unspoken level of trust that breeds extreme chemical reactions in battle. The video games tried to recreate this with your Pokemon hanging on in battle based on friendship values, but it just does not hold a candle to Ash getting turned to fucking stone in the first Pokemon movie. Although I truly believe that Ash's high level of battle experience comes more from the fact his brain is built perfectly for Pokemon battles than just carrying off of the back of his individual Pokemon. Because there are plenty of scenarios where Ash just overcomes tough odds even when he's working with unfamiliar Pokemon, like when he bests Hodge's Hariyama with Mr. Mime flawlessly, despite this being the first time Ash has used Mr. Mime in battle. Ash has also taken command over legendary Pokemon that have given them their trust temporarily, like when he fights off a Pokemon hunter using a stray Latios, telling me that no matter what obstacle he faces or Pokemon he's using, Ash is always gonna find a way to carve out a path to victory. And if you don't want to take that from me, the series quite literally says it itself when Claymont in X and Y attempts to use a robot to analyze Ash's battle strategy. And guess what? It malfunctions because apparently even a supercomputer found it impossible to make a plan that would actually work against Ash. Even up against a psychic trainer who can literally see the future, Ash and Pikachu manage to somehow accomplish the unthinkable and accurately time the duo's future sight down to the millisecond, correctly pinpointing the perfect opportunity in battle that allows them to turn its own attacks around on itself. Ash's quick thinking and adaptability is also applied when Ash is completely on the back foot with no other choice but to make use of the same advantages his opponent's exploiting. For example, in the battle in an extremely windy city with his Sceptile against Luna's Scizor takes full advantage of the wind to amplify its speed and overwhelm Sceptile, but Ash, in response, adapts and also gets Sceptile to make use of the same aerial adjustments, using his own opponent's strategies against them and ending the battle with a well-timed Leaf Blade. There have even been times when his Pokemon should have been unable to continue battling under normal circumstances, like when Farfetch'd Leak it used for a weapon was broken, something that is normally world-ending for the Pokemon, but Ash somehow inspired the Farfetch'd to actually use the split-in-half Leak as a two-piece combo, crafting a makeshift sword and shield to continue fighting. Or when Ash is battling Marnie, her Grimmsnarl is preparing to attack Ash's Gengar just as its Gigantamax mode is ending, where Gengar will be at its most vulnerable. However, in one last-ditch effort, Ash actually has Gengar use its remaining time and gigantic size to swallow Grimmsnarl whole, trapping the Pokemon inside of it just as it was de-transforming, which ends up working perfectly to keep Gengar safe. You even have instances in Sinnoh when Ash invents his own move just based on witnessing Dawn's contest performance prior to his battle. Ash is able to create a technique that utilizes both attack and defense and calls it Counter Shield, a trick Ash still uses to this day against high-level opponents like Champion Cynthia. And what's even crazier is Counter Shield is now a recognized Pokemon move, considering it has now been used by multiple other trainers like Paul, Brock, and even Galar Champion Leon. Again, even if you really want to downplay Ash and claim all of this stuff is just proof he wins due to plot, plenty of evidence has already been presented that can't be denied as Ash's pure skill. Even champions like Diantha of Kalos explain that from their own personal experience, type matchups are absolutely meaningless when it comes to battling Ash. One of the strongest champions of all time, Cynthia, tries to stop Ash from taking control of the arena with Stealth Rock. Ash's Sirfetch'd manages to blow all of the stealth rocks off the field in one quick swing. Champions like Steven Stone are utterly defenseless in battle against him, something Steven even admits when his Credilli is incapable of responding to Pikachu's battle tactics. Ash is capable of all of this because he has truly worked himself to become capable of handling anything. When Ash sees a strategy, he instantly adapts to it the very first time he sees it. Ash even dedicates his training to going up against specific opponents and teaches his Pokemon moves depending on the obstacles he may face. Ash Ketchum definitely earned his spot as the victor of the Masters 8 tournament. No plot armor or meddling required. So if he truly is the very best, like no one ever was, what higher level of trainer really is there that can handle Ash? This was only a brief introduction, and when I say brief, I mean I could probably make a 2-hour video on all of Ash's big feats. It should be more than enough to paint a picture in your head of what kind of battler he can be. But Red is no pushover either, regardless of which version you decide to go with. Even in the video games, Red consecutively holds some of the highest trainer leveled Pokemon in the entire series. Both his Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu teams having Pokemon at level 85 or higher, Red's Pikachu is actually the highest leveled Pokemon in the entire franchise, at least until Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, where Cynthia's Garchomp actually caught up in a rematch battle after Stark Mountain. Either way, Game Red is still out-leveling most major champions of all the regions, only being rivaled in collective team power by Cynthia of Sinnoh, no surprises here, and weirdly enough, Barry, your rival in Platinum, as a close second, who also, for some reason, outlevels most of these champions. Sinnoh just has something in the water, I guess. But while that does make it easy enough to just say Red compares to Ash, case closed, no more questions, levels and battles in the video games don't really give us much of an idea of how Red would react or make decisions as a trainer in real time. So I think it's best to default to the Pokémon Adventures manga for that. I've already went over a good portion of how strong Manga Red can be in this video over here, so definitely go check that out if you want a more full understanding of his story and character, but there's gonna be more than enough information in this video from Red's career that will help us come to a proper and fair conclusion. And I think the best possible way to get started with that is seeing how Red managed to actually gain his achievements and go deeper into his battle experiences and intellect from there. Like Ash, Red also managed to conquer a Pokemon League tournament and enter the Hall of Fame. But instead of beating the undefeated Drake, Red's final matchup was against his rival, Blue, or Green in the Japanese version. A champion match that is honestly one of the most intense Pokemon battles in the first couple of volumes of the manga, with Red doing his best to adapt to Blue's in-depth strategies, like hardening his Snorlax just before one of Machamp's Karate Chops lands in order to incapacitate the Pokemon's arm, or his last-ditch effort to win the tournament, as Blue's Ninetales is selectively picking off the last of Red's Pokemon one by one with Fire Blast. Red manages to make the most of this crisis and use his 3 most trusted companions that were all thought to be fainted and combine their different elements with all of the heat in the arena to conjure a thundercloud that delivers a surprise finishing blow to Blue's Pokemon, letting us see in one battle how similarly Red's brain works to Ash's, especially when it comes to things like turning an opponent's handicaps against them, which we see when Red officially takes down Team Rocket, earning his 8th and final gym badge in the challenge against leader Giovanni. And this battle is an entirely new concept to Red, where Giovanni sets up an arena that makes both trainers start at the edges while all of their Pokeballs remain in the center, forcing the trainers to rely on their speed and reaction time to release the correct Pokemon and hopefully respond accordingly to the other's moves, something that at first Red struggles with, as Giovanni can make multiple attacks with his Cloyster or Beedrill before Red manages to even make one. But when Red's life is on the line, he thinks of multiple different ways to catch Giovanni off guard, hiding a Pokeball beneath his shoe that Red kicks open to release his Aerodactyl, airlifting him out of danger and instant knocking out Giovanni's Beedrill with a Hyper Beam. This battle also showcases something that Red also has in common with Ash, which is creating impossible situations that can really only happen in the manga. And I bring this up to not only prove that Ash's quote-unquote plot armor wouldn't help him in the battle, as Red clearly has his own, but more so that it demonstrates how Red also responds well under pressure. And if Ash can make his own move, then I think it's fair to say Red also can too, because just as Giovanni is about to defeat Red, summoning all of his strongest Pokemon at once and even playing dirty by having Dugtrio trio crack Red's remaining Pokeballs and making them malfunction. With all of Red's remaining team members trapped inside their Pokeballs, Red takes his last companion Pikachu with all of this going on and secretly slips on an anti-electric glove he stole from Lieutenant Surge, using it to keep himself safe while Pikachu charges as much electricity as possible while still inside of its Pokeball. That way, when Red and Giovanni both toss out their final Mons, Pikachu is already prepared to fire a wide area Thunderbolt containing over 100,000 volts of electricity that clears all of Giovanni's Pokemon in a single blast. A true testament to what Red is capable of when his back is against the wall, and he's not bound by the rules of the video games, of course. After Red becomes league champion, sure, he does primarily go off the grid to train and further his ultimate potential, but he still presents himself as a formidable trainer across the entire world. Red is actually the sole target of the villainous Elite Four in the Yellow version sequel, where during a harsh battle with Bruno of the Elite Four, Red is deemed by Lorelei and Agatha to have way too much of an upper hand, making the 3 Elite Four members decide to jump Red all at once, sending out their Pokemon to utilize team attacks and strategies like freezing Red's wrists or ankles to keep him from winning. Despite this unfair loss, it honestly just serves to make Red look like more of a badass, since they needed 3 of the most elite trainers in the entire region to gang up on him to even have a chance of winning. What's worse, Red actually ends up permanently injured because of all of this, with his hands and feet constantly locking up on him at random times due to the after effects of Lorelei's ice cuffs. Yet despite this disability, Red is able to defeat Elite Four Bruno in a fair rematch after finally being freed from his prison, and he's even recommended to become the next Viridian City gym leader after passing the town's gym exam. But because Red deems himself unworthy of the position in this kind of state, he decides to climb Mount Silver in hopes of finding a healing hot spring that will heal Red from his wounds. But due to the mountain's harsh atmosphere, Red's unable to just fly up to the top using a Pokemon, which means this man had to climb up Mount Silver using his own hands and feet while they were frostbitten. It's obvious Manga Red is a badass, which is one of the main reasons he's constantly called back into the series to help with regional and sometimes even worldwide level threats. Red's responsible for the defeat of plenty of legendary Pokemon, most famously after watching gym leader Blaine almost sacrifice his life in an attempt at quelling the raging Mewtwo, an experiment said to be one of the strongest Pokemon of all time. Red still decides to charge in through the hurricane Mewtwo is creating, all of his trusted companions at his side, with the plan that if Mewtwo thinks a whole crowd is coming, he'll drop his close quarters guard in order to use wide-ranged attacks, which is exactly what happens, because just as Red and his team are launched by the windstorm, he tosses Pikachu through the eye of the storm and directly at the unsuspecting Mewtwo, as the yellow mouse was holding the very Master Ball that is used to capture and subdue the legendary Pokemon once and for all. Red has also teamed up with his rivals Blue and Green many times to stop evil, like when he uses Green's newly evolved Clefable to overwhelm Thuffizer, a fusion of all 3 Kanto's legendary birds, or when Red, Blue, and Green all tame these same legendaries to ride them in battle against the disillusioned Lugia and Ho-Oh in aerial combat. Ironically enough, Red also created a bond with the other legendary he defeated, Mewtwo, teaming up with the experimental clone to battle Giovanni's Deoxys, a mythical alien Pokemon that had the power to bring down the Delta Meteor, an anomaly that could have blown up the entire world. In this specific fight, Red shows another similarity to Ash, which is Red being willing to risk his own life to protect others and even the planet, commanding Mewtwo here to throw a Psychic Blast through Red's torso while he and Deoxys are tangled up and struggling, all just to have one chance at hitting the alien Pokemon's core and defeating it, making Red a trainer that's one of a kind. And the brutal nature of the Pokémon Adventures manga surely helps him stand out amongst most other characters, even as far into the manga's timeline like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where Red is still one of the most reliable and powerful dex holders across the known world, being tasked with participating in battles against Hoenn's villainous Aqua Leader Archie and Magma Leader Maxie, teaming up with Green to take on their Mega Sharpedo and Mega Camerupt with their own Mega Venusaur and Mega Blastoise respectively. But I think if we're really going to compare everything that Red has up against Ash, there's still one last thing we need to do, which is figure out what both of their best possible teams are and how that would influence the final battle. In terms of Trainer Red, it's actually exceptionally easy to figure out what his best team would be if we go with the manga, of course, because frankly, his team tends to be all over the place in other forms of media. media, from having every single starter Pokemon in Kanto in some of the games to even all of the Johto starters in Pokemon Stadium 2. There are multiple constants though across mediums that even get shared with the manga, like V, the Espeon, Snore, the Snorlax, and obviously Pika, Red's signature Pikachu. But to be honest with you, along with Red's stadium appearances, I think we could probably safely discount most of his video game only team, as it makes more sense Red would do best with a Pokemon he has more attachment with. And since Red's manga team are gonna have the most feats and experiences to pull from, they're probably the easiest to quantify. For example, for a water type, Red's options are Lapras from the games, Blastoise from the games, a Gyarados from the manga, and a Poliwrath. But Poly makes the most sense as a choice in my opinion for his best possible team due to the deep bond they share, since in the manga, this was Red's very first Pokemon, making Poly much more efficient at reading Red's strategies mid-battle and collaborating in tough situations. And if we're considering Red would have a fire type, video game options would definitely present Charizard as the better choice compared to his Let's Go Arcanine, but it's also important to consider manga Red chooses to forego fire entirely for Aerodactyl, the rock and flying type. Also, depending on how generous you really want to be to Red, you could give him a choice between using V's Espeon form or its special pre-evolution ability where it's able to swap between its 3 main evolutions at will, giving Red the potential of having a wild card of a typing amongst his team. Although even if you did leave it as an Espeon, the psychic Pokemon is a devastating foe regardless. Add in the power boost Venusaur would receive from Mega Evolutions, and having access to the ultimate grass move Frenzy Plant, Red's manga team actually has overall decent coverage on its own, with all the solid team synergy they get from working together for years. So for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna go with Red's manga team minus Gyarados, opposed to just, you know, guessing what Red's video game party could be capable of, making Red's team a breeze to put together, compared to Ash's, who has so many different possibilities that could lead to over hundreds to thousands of variations. So if we're going to create a 6-man formation that features the best Pokemon Ash can offer, I think the most realistic matchups for this battle would be Red's Venusaur going up against the best grass type equivalent on Ash's side, Sceptile, who no doubt is one of Ash's top tier choices, managing to one-shot even legendary Pokemon like Tobias's Darkrai. And for the water types, I think Red's Poliwrath most likely is going to get matched with Ash's Greninja, because ironically enough, if we're going to talk about Pokemon that have great bonds with their trainers, not only is Greninja one of Ash's most crucial teammates when it comes to championship battles, their bond is so supernatural it created a unique transformation only known as Ash Greninja mode that significantly raises Greninja's potential during fights. And unfortunately, this is where I think you'll begin to see Ash gaining a bit of an advantage here, because next up against Red's Aerodactyl, I think the best possible matchup would be his Lucario, because not only is the steel fighting type a perfect neutral counter for Aero's rock flying, its ability to mega evolve will give it the upper hand it needs. I would also be willing to accept Lycanroc as an effective replacement for this team slot. You'll also have another neutrality situation in the matchup between Red Snorlax, as I'm setting him up against Ash's Gengar, who, while Snore's pure normal type will cancel out Gengar's ghost type and vice versa, Gengar's added poison type and its special attacks might put it above Snore. And if it doesn't, we've already discussed how efficiently the ghost Pokemon is at making use of its Gigantamax form. For V, regardless of whether it's in its pre-evolution form or its Espeon mode, I think for such a wild card, it makes the most sense for Ash to choose one of his most reliable companions for this fight. Why not Charizard? Since type advantages don't matter at all to Ash, this guy's been a member of Ash's team since the early Kanto days, fighting by his side against legendary Pokemon and master trainers alike. So whether it's a triple typing Eevee or an insanely buffed up Espeon, Charizard should be more than capable of handling any foe it takes on. Obviously, I saved the last matchup because you guys probably already guessed it. The 6th and final round would consist of Pikachu on Pikachu violence. However, comparing both Pikachu's feats, I think it's almost too clear which mouse has the more battle experience over the other. And none of this takes into consideration that most of Ash's team members are going to have access to Z moves, something that I'm not even sure Red has been made aware of yet in the manga. You can make the argument that Ash is only allowed to use one of these regional mechanics at a time. I really don't think that's going to be the make or break to Ash's advantage in this battle. While I do think Red and the Pokemon manga's world is definitely much more brutal than the anime world, I think when you're going to compare him to the performance of a protagonist like Ash that has gained over 25 years of experience, the two trainers just seem a little incomparable. No matter whether you give Red his video game team, or if you make Ash go in blind with a randomized rotation of every possible Pokemon he could use. But what do you guys all think? Are you kind of agreeing with me that Ash just seems to have the higher win chance against Red? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos that you might enjoy. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.